Hello everyone, welcome to or back to the new grid. I'm Kyle, and in today's video I'm going to show you a little bit of full self-driving beta 10.10.2. This update has been very good for me. So with this update, I haven't had very many takeover events at all or interventions. So that's one big improvement over the previous version, which I was on 10.8.1 still. But I also took it down out in rural areas where there's buggies and whatnot, so I'm going to show you a little bit of that. And I also want to give an update on phantom braking first, because there have been some things I've learned in at least 10.8.1 and I've seen a lot better in 10.10.2. So with that, the first thing I've noticed is 99% of the mailboxes, it still maybe from a distance identifies it as a person, but it turns to being nothing identified by once you get fairly close to it, and it doesn't need to slow down at that distance that it initially identifies it as them. There are a few cases where I've seen that, hey, it does want to swerve a little bit around for them, or it continues detecting them and wants to slow down slightly. But these aren't the heavy phantom braking events that the NHTSA has been getting complaints about. So these are very minor ones, and I wouldn't really be concerned. A normal driver, if they're not using some type of speed control, they're going to basically be slowing down or speeding up in this pattern that you notice from these. So then the other case for phantom braking is when a vehicle gets on collision course with yours. So I've got a video clip of that here where a car is pulling out of an addition, making a right-hand turn. I'm going in the opposite direction of that, and because at the point where it's detecting where the vehicle's moving, they're actually moving in towards my pathway, so that's why my vehicle slows down there. That's the worst case of phantom braking that I've seen in 10.10.2, and this is nothing compared to what it used to be like at some points. And to be honest, this one wasn't as big of a deal for me, but I do know that one needed reported, because, hey, it shouldn't be braking for that type of behavior, because that car's got a predefined lane that it should be going into, and it shouldn't be detecting that, hey, it's going to just automatically go past outside of its lane into mine for a collision course. I think that's where it's kind of the balance of what safety is and what safety needs to be. It's a little bit of what's the trust. Do you trust that that vehicle's going into that lane line, or do you not trust them and that they're going to cross over and hit you? So that's a little bit of the differences of those cases. So another thing I wanted to say about the phantom braking issue with NHTSA is that there's actually about 3 different software versions out in the US. There's the early access, there's the regular, and then there's the full self-driving beta versions. And of course, to be able to get to beta, you've got to be in the early access so that you can get your safety score and be able to become part of the beta group. So with those 3 different levels, it kind of makes me wonder what versions actually had phantom braking reported to NHTSA. Was it only in the early access and full self-driving? I actually doubt that people in full self-driving beta would report the phantom braking issues to NHTSA. So my thinking is it's probably just the early access, and people aren't realizing, hey, we're in this early access program. There can be some issues that crop up, and maybe Tesla needs to be clearer about that. So that's something I was thinking about with this investigation into phantom braking, is what software versions what's happening in. I know with autopilot there are quite a few phantom braking events back before I reported what I noticed in full self-driving beta after I got into the beta version. So that's kind of what I'm thinking, is maybe it's just those early access builds, and of course full self-driving beta, because that's an extension of early access in my opinion. So that'd be interesting to know if it did make it out to the full mainstream release or not. Please consider liking and subscribing to this video, because I had to go through some pretty poopy roads to get some of this footage. So here's in the rural area where I'm passing a buggy. So this buggy's going the opposite direction, and I'm traveling towards it, and when I get to this buggy, it renders basically as a person and not a buggy, but it does continue to maintain control and keep away from it. So that was really good that it did that, that it kept that lane and control going around that horse and buggy, but the rendering on the screen as a person, what did it think it was, a centaur or something, and just kind of made him look like a person and not show the buggies. And in other cases where I'm behind them, it really doesn't show them either on the screen. Now I'm a little bit farther away from them in this case, and they were making a turn, so I didn't see them, and because they were turning, I didn't get up really close to them. I was manually driving at this point. Because going down rural roads, it's not that beneficial to use full self-driving beta because it limits your speed to about 29 miles an hour. It won't go over 30 miles an hour where there's no lane markings at all. And since these are country rural roads, it's technically around a 55 mile an hour zone. So that's one thing, and I'm sure that's probably the bottom of the priority because a lot of residential streets are the same way where there are no lane markings, but you need to limit your speed to around 30 miles an hour because you need to be careful around pedestrians. So that's why I was manually driving there, but I did, as you could see with the buggy case, I did have it engaged in a few cases just to see how it would perform, and it performed the same exact way as I expected. And then finally I'm showing you a little clip where there's a bunch of buggies on the right hand side of the road. So in this clip you can kind of see that these buggies did not get rendered. There's the vans on the side of the road there, but the buggies aren't showing up, so that's a continuation of it doesn't know what this object is. Now, should it render it? I would have thought that it would probably render as a car, but I guess neither of those really show up as cars or anything. So that kind of gives me a little bit of concern of how maybe some weird other vehicles are rendered. Now, I do know there's this three-wheeled motorcycle type vehicle, and it typically will render as a motorcycle. So that's one I've seen. Now, whether 10.10.2 has changed something, I haven't seen one of those on the roads lately, so I'm not really sure, but I'm thinking more of like the Arcomotive cars, how those might render and whatnot. So then finally, I just wanted to give an update on railroad tracks. In my area, it still does not slow down at all for railroad tracks, so I've got to take over. I've noticed this in a few different locations out in the country and out closer to where I test drive. So those are some of the situations that I really wish would get fixed. Because other than that, 10.10.2 is extremely good. I've only had a few other issues that I want to save for a different video because I also want to show how well it's performing in another video, but I thought I'd give you an update on phantom braking and then a little bit of bonus scenes from how it handles in the rural country where there's buggies and whatnot. So with that, please consider subscribing, like this video if you like this kind of content. It really does help out my channel, and I'll see you in the next one.